I'm your host, U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Medic, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, MD. And we have with us today an esteemed media partner, Stephanie Kalota. She's a U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class, veteran founder, and host of the Political Veteran Podcast and AHG correspondent. And she's bringing a topic to me today where she's going to twist my mind and I'm going to become enlightened. But she is an expert on many of the policies and the bills that are going through our Senate and House, and making sure that things are watched as we are making decisions. So our discussion is on HR Bill 9495, the impact if it passes the Senate. And HR 9495 is Stop Terror, Financing, and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act. Hi, how are you doing, Stephanie?
Doing good. I apologize for the cat. Jeez.
Oh, I had one here too. I had my door closed, but my cat likes to come in too. So I feel really at home now.
Thank you. So this is my stress reliever while everything has been going on. So Bill 9495 is something that's been making a lot of people pretty stressed. What it does, it's called, the full name of it is Stop Terror, Financing, and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act. Sounds great, right? Like something that anybody would be behind.
You want to do, right?
Right. But what it does also is give the Secretary of Treasury, and IRS basically is underneath them, and other organizations, and really the president, because secretaries follow the orders of the president, and if they don't, they get fired. And we know President Donald Trump is very good at doing that via X, or then Twitter. So we know that power can be held. And so if they don't do what he likes, he's going to find somebody else that does it. Mm-hmm. And the thing with this bill is that it actually removes the nonprofit status to an organization for any reason. They can say that they have a connection to a terrorist group, and then they can remove the nonprofit status.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And it could be in the middle of the tax season.
Yeah. It can be. It's quite interesting on how that goes. A lot of nonprofits try to be very apolitical and stay away from that. Although there are other nonprofits that do very political things, like the Heritage Foundation, Vote Vets. All of those are nonprofits technically. But if they have any association, or if they have a political, hand in things, it can lead to probably penalization by anyone that's in charge of this. And that's what people are fearing.
Well, that's really terrible. I mean, because we when I took an oath for the military, it was about, domestic and foreign enemies, right? Defense against that. And one of the things that worries me about what you're saying is that, so it can be maybe potentially selectively applied. So if it's an organization that is involved with what some people might, they always say that, one man's, terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, right? So if the person is viewed as being part of an organization that is creating a terror situation, then if they're favorable to me, then they're my freedom fighter. If they're not favorable to me, so there's a chance of a lot of selectivity here for the application of this, right?
Yeah, and actually, the NAACP has already spoken out against this bill. They actually call it the Kill Nonprofits Bill, by the way.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I love that they rename things so that way it's one of those ways to really clarify what they really mean. Yes. And for those that are interested about it, if you just Google NAACP oppose, HR 9495, it probably but before you even finish, it's probably going to pop up. So if you guys are interested about it, look that up. They actually have one that you can email your senator on their website, by the way.
Oh.
I'm looking at that right now.
Oh.
Yeah. And this bill only recently passed. This passed on the 21st, which of course was when I had did a social media shutdown. Things always happen when I do that for, short time frame for your mental health. And that's what happened during then. But it had tried to pass before. They failed earlier in November, and it failed 382 to 11. But then they didn't. They were able to make the flip and actually pass it, I believe, with 217 or 218, which is the minimum that they need to pass.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm still going through 219. Excuse me.
219.
Yeah, I'm still going through line by line on the bill text to figure out whether there was actually something different that changed. I'm not finding a whole lot of things that changed within it, but a lot of the pundits, law pundits especially, are really worried about the nonprofit exemption, tax exemption portion and the removal of that. And it's mostly because that they fear that there will be no adjudication given to these organizations that have the nonprofit status, and they're not able to actually fight it in court or what have you. Right. So, because typically, if you're in connection to a terrorist organization, they do an investigation, they do an indictment, grand jury and things, and that's how they would go down the road. But this just skips all of the adjudication.
Wow. And this is one of the things that really bothers me, because I having been a state health official, I dealt a lot with not-for-profit organizations. And what this bill effectively does is it places the burden of proof on the not-for-profit organization, being accused, and effectively eliminates due process, right?
Yes.
By only allowing an organization 90 days to prove its innocence before having its tax-exempt status revoked. Now, if I'm part of those, they usually work on a very thin margin. Not-for-profit organizations don't get a lot of funding sometimes when they're doing critical work in communities. And how do they actually fight something like this without having the expertise on board, without having the ability to hire a high-speed attorney? And people who are in those organizations, many of them are being marginally paid because it's a lot of volunteer work, and people are, are they going to walk away from these organizations saying in 90 days we may not exist and I need to find another job? So they're actually causing a lot of disruption in the fundamental operations of not-for-profits that are essential for the country.
Yeah, it's really reminded me of, it's not a nonprofit-esque thing, but it's really reminding me when I'm a Floridian. So it's reminded me of Governor DeSantis when he removed special exceptions and privileges that Disney had, because Disney spoke out against the Don't Say Gay Act and the Stop Woke and all the other acts that had been processed through. And thank goodness, I mean, Disney has, the money for the lawyers and things like that. They still lost the status that they had. But Florida, the state of Florida actually ended up losing more money in the long run because of how things worked out. Because in that area, Disney actually ended up running their own area and organization. They paid for the utilities, they covered it, they actually serviced everything in the area. Now the state actually has to do all of that. So the federal government didn't learn that lesson, and we'll see how that goes with nonprofits, because a lot of things are successful because of nonprofits. The help with hurricane relief, natural disasters. And if nonprofits are more worried about losing their status and running, they might not actually do their jobs.
Right. Yeah, because that was and they were essential for COVID vaccinations. They were essential for HIV and STD prevention. You go down the list of things that they were involved in, and they still are every day.
Feeding people during COVID. I mean, there was scores of organizations that popped up and created so that people can feed people that were starving during COVID because of XYZ that was going on. So this is going to cause an interesting thing for us to watch, but I honestly don't think it's going to pass the Senate. But what it's probably going to do is that it's going to resurface after the new congressional session comes up next month.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be one of the first one of the first 500 bills to be introduced, or at least the first 1,000, because there's usually about 10,000 a year, and at least just the House that gets introduced a year.
Boy, yeah, because this is something really, incredible. Because one of the things that is worrisome to me as well is that it can actually go into. We're now talking about the immigration status of people, and even people who were born here as being not really citizens. That they came from undocumented parents and that kind of thing, and that the undocumented portion of it is like 1 out of every 10 construction workers, 20 to 30% of the people working on dairy farms for cheese and now milk, and
meat processing plants.
Meat processing plants.
A lot of them, like the stuff a lot of people really don't want to do. That's what they're doing.
Roofing, lawn care. Yep. I mean, you name it. So, but the thing, these are serving immigrants and refugees. So this is something that is focusing on that as a group. And now they've tied that to criminal activity and terrorist activity. And I could see them extending that to organizations that hire people or not-for-profit organizations that have people who are undocumented as part of their ranks and say, oh, this is part of some terrorist group. I mean, it could be spun any way. We know how things are spun, right, in politics. So that's a really dangerous power, relative, potentially.
It is. It's also going to cause nonprofits to stop working overseas as well, because then you're less likely to encounter the terrorists. So there's a lot of American nonprofits going all across the world, helping tons of people that need it. Africa, Gaza, Ukraine, they're going to less likely help them now. I mean, especially if you're on the wrong side of the war, the conflict that's happening. Because if you're there helping Gazans, you help or communicate with the wrong person, you can accidentally be talking to Hamas.
Right. So and Doctors Without Borders, or
it can cause a lot of issues. And I mean, in Ukraine, President Trump is a huge fan and friend of Putin. Helping people of Ukraine can cause a terrorist connection, possibly. Because the reason why Russia invaded is because they said that there's Nazi, in control of the area. Now they're trying to take it over to, release and help Ukraine. So these type of things, if you end up on the wrong side of the conflict, you can end up losing your job and your livelihood.
That's really interesting to me because, working on issues related to wars and victims of wars. Now, so when I was in Iraq, did 2 tours over there, and I was helping, our veterans, of course, the soldiers and the airmen and that kind of thing. But we also had to take care of considered enemy combatants, and we had to give them care. We could not, according to the Geneva Convention, you must take care of people, and I protected them. So am I aiding a terrorist now, or as a military person, as a soldier? So it's really it's a very complex issue. And I think that, issues around equity and, and even domestic terrorism, right? So we have, the Proud Boys, we have other groups that are domestic terrorists that have been identified as that. And does that affect all their affairs? Or are they going to be spared? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That reminds me. When I was new to a certain town, I was looking up events online to try to figure out where, I can meet people and, get to know local people and have some fun that way. So I found an ice cream social. I was like, okay, cool. No, that was actually where they recruited people for Proud Boys in my area. Found out before I showed up, thank goodness.
Wow.
But you would have never known until you started talking to them, and then you would have the association down. So, and this was 2 years before, actually before January 6th.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, that was interesting. And a few of the guys actually that were there that I saw like on the list of, the stuff, you could see it was posted publicly. They were actually arrested.
Oh boy.
Or tied to January 6th. So there are a lot of ways that you can accidentally walk in and somehow get loosely associated.
Yeah, and see, we have to really get to the point where we, bring the country back together again. And those kinds of situations, I'm hoping that and you have Democrats and Republicans on this bill, right, supporting it. And I'm not sure of what the thinking is behind it, but I'm really hoping that it does get defeated, as you were mentioning, because the impact on not-for-profit organizations can't be withstood. If we really start destroying the fundamental things, because most of the people in the not-for-profits aren't making a whole lot of money. Okay, first of all, some of them are making barely above minimum wage. For really taking care of people and dedicated to the community. They have a motivation, a passion for helping people. And if you discourage them from doing that, we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, we are. What was it? I found a quote from Representative Jamie Raskin, who's really been on top of a lot of the legal stuff that happens in the ethics committee. If you guys ever wanted to look up somebody that really is outspoken and he really is on point on a lot of things, it's Jamie Raskin. He's a great representative from Maryland.
Yeah.
He actually has said that the bill's constitutionality may be in question because the language does not specifically, or he says sufficiently distinguish between foreign and domestic threats.
Right. Yes.
That can be something that could be thrown in there, and that could come up in the Supreme Court, all the way up to the Supreme Court with this law if the right case actually gets through. So it's something to really watch and see how that would go, because this might be something we would be watching the next couple of years.
Wow. So what is the Treasury Department's response been? Is anything that you're aware of? Going into the new administration, I'm not sure if they're saying anything about it. And
I haven't seen much, but the Attorney General that is now the newly appointed, or at least Trump had picked her, Pam Bondi, after Matt Gaetz resigned or relinquished his nomination. Pam Bondi is looking towards. She really does want to. They're saying she's targeting Trump enemies. So we'll see how that one actually works out. If she is doing that. She is actually a lawyer for President Trump. She was actually part of his legal team for one of his impeachments, actually. And one of the few lawyers that was not indicted in all of the election issues that happened with 2020 either. I was pretty surprised about that because I made sure I looked that up. She wasn't part of any of that I can find. But yeah, she is one of his personal lawyers, but she has attorney general experience. She was the attorney general of Florida for a number of years. So one up on Matt Gaetz, at least.
Yeah. At least some experience.
Yes. And she was smart enough not to get in trouble with other things, investigations that have indicted other lawyers of President Trump, and those have pleaded guilty. So she's a smart cookie. So we'll see how that goes on, how that one works out. I will be very interested to see her hearings, her nomination hearing and stuff like that. And they'll probably talk about something like this as well. For next congressional session, this will probably be something that they will bring up. I can imagine a couple of the House representatives, because the House doesn't do any of the hearings for nominations. That's just the Senate. So, but I can imagine the House Representatives may be working with the senators and probably get those questions put out there for them.
Yeah, and all we can do is hope that things go well, because the people who this will impact are, our citizens, our, people in this country who are, trying to do good things, or trying to build a positive environment for people.
Yeah.
And we have too many people who are homeless and, despondent. We have mental health issues out there, where we have, not-for-profits helping with mental health issues,
Yeah.
bullying. I mean, violence prevention. Those things are really, critical for our safety and the sanctity of the people in our country. And so I'm hoping that she does do a good job, if she does, assume that position, after the nomination process.
Yeah. Yeah, there's other organizations other than the NAACP that has voiced, their opposition to this bill as well. The AFL-CIO, which I had to Google because I couldn't remember what that one, and that is the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations. It's the National Trade Union Center. So them, United Auto Workers, and Planned Parenthood have already sent letters to Congress voicing their strong opposition to it. They're worried. So that could be that. I was expecting Planned Parenthood to voice some opposition to it, because they get enough domestic threats themselves for just doing their jobs. So I can imagine that they don't want any more drama than they're already getting. And with everything going on, it could be very stressful. So we'll have to see on how those things go.
Right. And and that, it brings in their funding into question too. And this is something that, they are, and actually I haven't seen as much outreach from not-for-profits in this season as I've seen before. And I'm not sure of what's going on, whether,
maybe your spam folder or your junk folder is doing a real good job, because I've gotten a lot.
I'm missing my mail. Okay.
Because I've gotten a lot of emails yesterday, because yesterday's Giving Tuesday, which is the
Giving Tuesday.
Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And that's where all the nonprofits were like, all right, where's the money? Let's go and try to raise a ton. And so I've gotten a lot of emails.
I got one from the Chicago Art Institute.
So yeah, they're still working. They're still trying to do their jobs and trying to help out. And I highly recommend people to try to talk about, talk with them, try to voice their support. I really encourage people to contact their senators.
Yes.
I mean, you can do it through the NAACP, because that's a really great organization to try to send a letter through to them, or you guys can call them yourselves. Just Google who's my senator, have the state, because you guys got two, and just give them a call. Call the DC office, because if you go call them, you'll reach somebody that's more on the legislation that's happening right now, and just say, hey, I want to talk to somebody about this bill. 94, 95, 95, 94. I can't remember which one it is, but 94, 95. And be very nice to the first person you talk to, because they're most likely an unpaid or lowly paid intern. So be very nice to that person you speak to first.
Okay. Talk about low wage, not-for-profit positions, huh? Okay.
Yeah. I think it's 15 an hour, which, it sounds great, but that's also DC, and the cost of living, I think, is like 27 to an hour to survive. So 15 does not make it. They're often college interns and very nice, smart people. So they definitely deserve the respect, when you answer them. So let them know, and they can help you out a ton too.
Yeah. But are there national, not-for-profit organizations out there, like an umbrella that, I think the ACLU is also making comments too.
Yeah. Yeah, they are too. That's a big one to also hear from. And they're also voicing their opinions. I don't know if they have set up the email the senator portion like others have, but yeah, they're also very much talking about it too. Can't wait to hear what other ones may speak about, because there are a lot of, I mean, not nonprofits, but there are a lot of corporations that have nonprofits. So like Bill Gates, his nonprofit is huge, and they do amazing international work. So I'm waiting to hear from him, even though he tries to stay very non-political. So it would be great to see what they have to say as well.
Yeah, because Melinda Gates has a not-for-profit as well, and she's more within the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's another person that hopefully that she'll receive support or is able to voice her opinion too about this whole issue. But anything, and the thing is that the way they framed it, a terrorist supporting organization, it just that leaves. I mean, lawyers can wield words and and spin things, but this just leaves the door wide open.
Yeah, it makes me nervous. I mean, I like to do the reading on all sides, all spectrum of political speak, and especially on Reddit, because I'm an in-depth Redditor. And there are a lot of alt-right that are calling the left terrorists, domestic terrorists, because they support communism.
Right. Yeah.
So that can cause a lot of, polarizing emotions and fear amongst people that are just trying to help people, help the homeless, So it's one of those things that we have to really try to be aware of and know and communicate. And it's going to be an interesting year in the next year.
Yeah, because even a lot of the and you can actually do it on religious grounds too. You have the mosque and that kind of thing, and some of them have not-for-profits, and they're helping the communities, and it would be very easy for them to sort of penalize them, I imagine.
A lot of synagogues have nonprofits. There's a synagogue I used to go to that had, I wasn't a member, but I used to go to for their events, and they have a food festival every year, and all the food's donated, and all the money goes directly to the homeless and the people that need food, and 100% of the money goes to them. So that's a really huge deal. And a lot of anti-Semitic things have been coming out in the last year, especially with the event in Madison Square Garden. So there's a lot of things we have to watch out for and be aware of to see how that would go, because these organizations may not be doing their work to help people that need it because of this.
But one of the things is that it sounds like almost to take care of things like that, you would have an expansion of government, of federal government, to actually to implement this kind of plan. And we're talking about downsizing it, and so it's really a very complex issue. But we're running out of time, and I'm going to have you back on. Okay, so I have a half a minute. I'm seeing my code here, but thank you so much, Steph. And anything people should just do. I mean, the HR 9495. Go and read about that, you said, and participate. You're a part of the country, and make sure your legislators know about this. And we're going to have you back on, of course, Steph. But we'll be looking forward to talking to you about this throughout the year.
And resources are empowered intentionally.